Psychology, a vast topic with so many different layers, levels, and branches, if you will. To begin, we must look into the roots or the core of what psychology actually is. But before we get into that, psychology is the scientific study of behavior and mental processes, essentially a scientific viewpoint on how humans act, feel, and think. To break it down some more, scientific study-wise, the information is collected through systematic procedures, for example, the scientific method, or records of observations and measurements, knowledge based on inferences found from data, and having an openness to inspection and critiques on your research. Basically, not holding too much pride or being too stubborn when it comes to anyone coming in and giving you any critiques based on your findings. To continue with this, now we look into what becomes of these mentalities, that being behavior. This is known as activities that can just be observed, or such as walking, running, drinking, eating, sleeping, things of that nature. To break it down some more, we look into the mental processes, things that can't be recorded down on a piece of paper as they're all occurring in the mind. For example, emotions, motivations, dreams, perceptions, beliefs, and of course, your thoughts.
Let's get into the roots of psychology. Before psychology had labs and textbooks, people were already trying to understand the mind. In prehistoric times, strange behavior is mostly blamed on strange, bad spirits. The treatment for this? Trephining. Drilling a hole into your brain to let the bad spirits fly out. Talk about a mind-opening experience, am I right, guys? Egyptians were more romantic. They believed that the heart controlled your thought and emotions, while your brain was mostly ignored. I still believe in this, but whatever. Then the Greeks, Aristotle and Socrates, began to ask deeper questions. Are we born with knowledge, or do we gain knowledge through experience? During the Middle Ages, psychology ended up slowing down as behavior was mostly blamed on supernatural experiences or religious explanations. Then, psychology finally became a science. In Germany, William Wundt, dubbed the father of psychology, opened the first psychology lab and studied consciousness and introspection, which is when people report their own thoughts and feelings. He believed that the mind could be broken down into the basic building blocks of experience. This was called structuralism. His student, Edward Titchener, helped spread these ideas. In America, William James took a different approach. Instead of asking what the mind is made of, he wondered what the mind was for. His theory, functionalism, focused on how our thoughts helped us adapt and survive. His book, Principles of Psychology, became a landmark within the field. One of James' students, Mary Winton Calkins, if I'm saying that right, completed all the work for a Harvard PhD and was yet still denied her degree because she was a woman. Still, after all the rejection, she went on to become the first female president of the American Psychological Association, or as we know it, the APA. G. Stanley Hall, a student of both James and Wundt, helped organize psychology in the United States, founding the APA in 1892 and creating the first journal, the American Journal of Psychology. Meanwhile, psychology was still fighting for human treatment. Mistreatment of mental asylum patients was terrible, degrading conditions that weren't fit for human life, and yet we still had humans in these spaces. Dorothea Dix felt very heavily about these issues and went on to expose the terrible conditions for the mentally ill, and she pushed for reform, helping establish early mental hospitals. Moving on to Margaret Floyd Washington, who went on to become the first woman to earn a PhD in psychology from Harvard. It would have been Mary Winton Calkins, but she was denied. And she went on to become the second female president of the APA. And journalist Nellie Bly, following in Dorothea Dix's footsteps, went undercover in an asylum, later writing 10 Days in a Madhouse, revealing the shocking abuse inside and helping spark major reforms. From spirits and skull drilling to labs, journals, and reformers, psychology grew from one powerful question: what really goes on inside the mind?
The perspectives. To get a better visual, let's take a look at the infamous hand. The biological perspective means every behavior, feeling, and thought is connected to a physical event in the brain. This includes neurotransmitters, brain structures, hormones, and genetics. We all should know the thumb of the hand represents a psychodynamic perspective. This perspective emphasizes the role of the unconscious mind. Repression is when drives are repressed, buried, or pushed out of conscious awareness. Repression is used to protect the unconscious mind from anxiety-inducing thoughts. Anna O is a patient who suffered from paralysis of limbs, nausea, and sleep disturbances. Joseph Breuer, her colleague, used hypnosis and spoke freely of emotional experiences. As a result, Anna O's symptoms went away. Her case helped inspire Sigmund Freud and the development of psychoanalysis. Catharsis is an expression of intense emotion, providing cleansing or reduction of that feeling through expression of that feeling. An example of this would be feeling relieved after journaling to process trauma. Behavior is driven by thoughts, memories, and desires hidden from conscious awareness. The behavioral perspective focuses on how observable behaviors are learned, maintained, or changed through environmental interactions. Pavlov and Watson are foundational figures in behaviorism. They establish how environmental stimuli shape behavior through classical conditioning. Operant conditioning focuses on reinforcement and punishment to shape behavior. Together, Thorndike and Skinner established the foundation of behaviorism and operant conditioning. The humanistic perspective emphasizes the innate drive towards self-actualization. Maslow and Rogers founded humanistic psychology. The cognitive perspective is the way we process or transform mental processes of thinking, knowing, perceiving, and remembering. Lastly, the eclectic perspective. This is a combination of all perspectives. Because behavior is complex, using multiple perspectives gives a more complete understanding.
Non-experimental methods of research are essential to understand for the exam. They involve studying variables as they naturally occur without manipulation of any variables or randomly assigning participants. First up is naturalistic observation. It's where subjects are observed in their natural environments and the observer does not attempt to interfere with the natural behavior of the subject. The subject has no idea that it's being studied or observed. Case studies are an extensive study of all or part of the life history of an individual. It's essential in understanding and helping psychological disorders. Think of it as being a detective on someone's case. Right, guys? You're looking at a specific individual in depth, and the study can last from months to even years. Surveys are used for larger groups of people to measure attitude and behavior patterns. Part of a good survey is defining your population, the group of people the subjects will be pulled from, and also randomly selecting your subjects to ensure that there's no bias and that results can be generalized to a population. Random selection is different from random assignment, since you aren't splitting subjects into groups, but rather just choosing subjects randomly. With surveys, you need to be careful, because people can be big fat liars. Social desirability bias is when people answer a survey in the way they think will please the researcher. Self-report bias is where people don't accurately report or remember their behaviors. Correlational studies. Correlational studies test to see if variables are related. It's literally in the name. Changes in one variable are associated with changes in another variable. Third variable problem is another event that connects the two variables. When both variables go in the same direction, that's called a positive correlation. When both variables go in opposite directions, that's a negative correlation. Correlational coefficients are computed numbers that express the degree and direction of relationships from -1 to +1. 0 means there's no relationship. The final type of non-experimental method is the meta-analysis. It's a combination of multiple independent studies that address the same research question to produce a more reliable estimate of what is being measured.
Hello, I am Kalina. Descriptive statistics are statistics used to describe. The math that proves what we're saying isn't just made up. Distribution is how those statistics are spread out, making it easier to analyze the results. Now, those distributions can generally be visually categorized. The bell curve shows a standard distribution in which the majority of people fall into the middle. 68% of people fall within one standard deviation, 95% fall within two standard deviations, and 99% of people fall within 3 standard deviations. Measures of central tendency. There are 3 measures of central tendency. The first is the mean, the average of all the data and the most commonly used measure. The median represents the middle score of all the data and is mostly used if there varies too much from the data. When there are outliers, the distribution becomes skewed as they pull the data one way, either positively or negatively. A bimodal distribution is when there are two distinct clusters of data in a set. There are two measures of variability. The first is range, which shows the difference between the highest and lowest data. Standard deviation shows how data deviates from the mean and is the most used descriptive statistic. One standard deviation is 68% with a 34% deviation above and below the mean. Two deviations is 95% with a 47.5 deviation above and below the mean, and three deviations being 99% with 49.5% being above the mean and 49.5% being below the mean. Percentile rank uses percentages to rank people, with 0 to 99th percentile going from lowest to highest rank.
Ethics in psychology. First, the preamble of the APA. Okay, first we need to introduce the American Psychological Association, or other words, the APA. They're a professional organization representing psychology in the United States.
Respect the dignity and worth of the individual. Strive to preserve and protect human rights, increase knowledge, and protect the welfare of those seeking services.
Rights. Rights you need to know before starting a research or research participants consider benefits to society and dignity and welfare of subjects, advantages, alternatives, purposes, and also deception. Next, care of animals. This means keeping animals healthy and comfortable and treating them kindly and avoiding pain or illnesses unless it's really necessary. The research should help make progress and be good for the animals too. Okay, next, informed consent and assent. Say you're running an experiment and you need people to test it on. The person you're testing needs to be told enough to make the choice to even participate in your experiment. Okay, you also need to know confidentiality. This is the ethical principle of protecting the privacy and personal information of research participants. Okay, the use of deception. The Community of Standards in Research, also known as the USR, make sure studies follow ethical rules. Some studies need people to pretend to be participants, but are actually working with the researchers. Lastly, debriefing. Making sure subjects are aware of what the study was about and the true nature of the study.